It's Cinemassacre's Monster Madness!
By the end of the 60s, Hammer's horror series were running out of steam, so they decided to reboot both the Frankenstein and Dracula series, fresh and new, and release them on a double bill in 1970. The films were Horror of Frankenstein and Scars of Dracula. Even though they were trying to start Dracula over again, they included a resurrection scene, as if they couldn't make up their mind. The movie literally opens with a fake bat flying in and randomly spitting blood onto Dracula's ashes. And there you go, Dracula's back. If they couldn't come up with a better idea, why even include the resurrection scene at all? It's a reboot. I'd talk about the plot, but there isn't much of one. The main character is a guy named Paul. What else?
Is it Paul?
It's always Paul.
Paul, what have you done now?
Hammer named their movie characters the same way George Foreman named all his sons.
Paul.
Well, Paul, again, is on the run from the law. After 30 minutes of meaningless wandering, he ends up at, where else? Dracula's castle. Dracula treats him as a guest and actually speaks a great deal of dialogue for once. At this point, it starts to play out like the original novel where Jonathan Harker arrives at the castle. Paul is seduced by Dracula's vampire girl and ends up sleeping with her. When they awake the following morning, she tries to bite his neck, but Dracula barges in. Without missing a beat, Paul tries to strangle his host. Dracula throws him aside, withdraws a knife, and begins stabbing the fucking crap out of her. This would have been very appropriate had it been a slasher film, and if this was a psychopathic killer instead of Dracula. It's amazing. I'm shocked, speechless every time I see it. The only thing better would be to see Dracula with a machine gun. Some people have questioned why a knife would kill a vampire, but hey, in the novel, Dracula's killed by a knife, well, 2 knives. Then he bends down and starts to drink her blood. Well, that's what we can assume, but they cut the scene. Originally, there was supposed to be more footage of Dracula drinking the blood from her corpse. You might ask, why would Dracula drink blood from somebody who's already dead? Well, why does he use a knife? What's wrong with this movie? Paul ends up getting trapped in the castle, and the rest of the movie follows his brother and his girlfriend who go to the castle looking for him. They find Paul dead on a meat hook, and then they have to fight Dracula. That's the best way I can describe the plot without talking about every incident that happens. That's all it is, a series of incidents. Granted, it gives Christopher Lee a lot more screen time than usual, it goes back to its gothic roots with angry villagers, and it draws a few elements from the novel, like when Dracula climbs up the wall. It also has some brief nudity, some major cleavage, and the gore is cranked up high. Dracula tortures his servant with a burning sword. A priest gets his face picked apart by a bat, and there's close-ups of people's mangled faces. It savors every bloody detail. Dracula's death scene is as random as his resurrection, yet it's the most spectacular since his death by sunlight in the first movie. He's holding a metal pole and is struck by lightning. Call it divine intervention if you will, it's still pretty random. If you want to describe this movie to someone, all you need is 3 words: Dracula on fire. It doesn't get any better than that. And it goes on for a whole minute. Sometimes it's Christopher Lee, sometimes it's a stunt guy, and other times it's a dummy. Eventually, Dracula flies off the castle like a burning meteor, and the movie ends abruptly. Scars of Dracula has some great highlights, but overall, it's just a rehash of everything that's already been done. The characters are flat, the storyline is uninspired, but enjoyable nonetheless. It's some first-rate horror trash.